1, 2, 1, 2. Welcome, everybody. It is 6 p.m. here in the UK. Very sunny, lovely weather here today in Cheshire. If you can see and hear me okay, please drop a like. Please drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from for this special live stream we have going on today. We had Strings of Grace was first in with a comment about 4 hours ago. So she's been keeping her seat warm for a while there. Always learn something new from your live streams. Thank you very much. Strings of Grace. Victor is here, says great topic. Bo is here. Hello, Michael and Stacie. Thanks for joining us. No problem. Thank you, Bo. Stacie will be joining us here in a second. Gary is here. Nice to have you, Gary. Swearworks is here. Good morning from Texas. Teddy. Rob, greetings from a bitterly cold Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you, Rob, for joining us. It's the opposite here. I'm sweating buckets here in my little office, which is supposed to keep the heat in. It's designed to keep the heat in. I don't have air conditioning or anything, so it's sweaty here. But you don't want to hear about that. Swearworks, greetings from CDMX. Walrus Lance is here from Florida. Code Whisperer from Texas. Victoria from Toronto. Susan from Pennsylvania. Stacie from Maryland. Catherine from New York City. Tobias from Oregon. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. It is a very special session we have planned for you. This is a bit different from our usual deal. We have a special guest today. We have Stacie Bloomfield, who is an art licensing expert, pattern designer extraordinaire. She's written books. She's done all sorts of stuff, and we'll bring her on here and ask her some questions here in a second. Fanny is here from Denmark, Ilka from Germany, Sarah from Vermont. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So before we do get to Stacie, let me just give a couple of housekeeping things. Today, we are talking about art licensing, but please do like and subscribe if you haven't already. That would be very helpful. This is all about art licensing, and we do have a special guest. So if you're not familiar with art licensing or what that means, basically we're talking about taking your art, licensing it to usually brick and mortar companies or stores or manufacturers. And obviously we'll get into the details here. If you're familiar with print on demand, which I know a lot of us are, that's essentially art licensing. You are licensing your art. You're just licensing it to Redbubble or Society6. The difference is that it's not online typically with most art licensing deals, or they're not exclusively online. And there's just this whole world of opportunity out there with art licensing that I believe a lot of print on demand sellers and designers are not really tapping into. So that's what we'll talk about today. Hawk from Algeria is here, and Schroeder is here too. Hello to you. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. As usual, please do ask your questions in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, go ahead and ask your questions throughout. Don't feel like you're interrupting. Just go ahead and, if you've got a question, just pop it in the box. I'll be monitoring the comments and the questions, and we'll answer as many as we can here today. We will go for about 45, 50 minutes, something like that. So we'll get into a lot of stuff. So there'll be plenty of time to ask questions. We will leave some time at the end, but go ahead and just drop them in the comments if you've got them. And Holloway is here. Good day to you as well. So, finally, Stacie does have a free mini course which opened this week. There's currently two sessions in there which are live already. Really good information, really great stuff. And if you want to sign up for that, completely free, michaelessick.com/Stacie if you're interested in that. Obviously, you can see the link up there as well, which we will keep. Where is it? Right up there, which we'll keep up there throughout. So make sure you're signed up there to get all the good stuff, more detailed and good information from Stacie about licensing your art and all that kind of stuff. All right. Without further ado, I think we will bring Stacie on here in a second. Just to give a bit of intro, Stacie is a pattern designer, art licensing expert, illustrator, and more besides. I found Stacie through Instagram. She's very prolific on there. And I think, I get a lot of questions regularly on the stream or in my emails or whatever, asking about art licensing, asking for more information. How do we do it? How do we start? And all those kind of things. My experience with art licensing is very limited. I do a little bit of it, but it's a very small part of my business. So that's why I brought Stacie on today. She's really a much more experienced person in this regard. So that's why she's here. So I'm going to bring Stacie on. Please give a warm welcome to Stacie Bloomfield. And here she is.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everybody.
How are you doing, Stacie?
I'm fantastic. It's actually sunny out today. I live in Arkansas, and it has been rainy for weeks, it feels like. So today the sun's out. Makes me feel good.
Yeah, same here. It's been like miserable for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then this past week, it's just opened up and it's wonderful t-shirt weather all the way. So we are very pleased over here. It's lovely to have you, Stacie. We got a few people saying hello already in the comments. So without further ado, why don't you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself? Tell us about your particular business, how you got started and kind of where it's at today.
Absolutely. So I've been an illustrator for 12 years. I got my start selling on Etsy, selling art prints of nursery decor. So I had my first child and I wanted to decorate their nursery. And so I made my own artwork for it. And I've always been a doodler, right? Doodler and artist. And I quickly realized that I had kind of a signature style of how I was drawing. I'm sorry, I have 2 dogs. If you hear barking, I can't control that. I'm sorry. So on Etsy, I kind of found an audience where people really love these animal illustrations I was making. And because I did it in a really unique way, a really consistent style, I quickly found success in the nursery decor area. So that led to eventually licensing my artwork with other nursery decor brands. So the Land of Nod, which is part of Crate and Barrel, which is a big, huge company. I was doing nursery decor for them and they were paying me for it. I realized that I had this body of work and people were essentially renting my artwork from me to put on their products, right? Which was fantastic. And that led to me realizing that I could leverage my art into multiple income streams. The same art, make it once, and then I could put it in multiple places. I could put it on my own products. I could put it with like a print on demand company. I could license it to other companies. And then I could teach about it. So over the years, I've grown my business from where I was just making, doodles essentially from my dining room table selling on Etsy to running now a 7-figure business built with multiple income streams, which is pretty incredible. And it's all based off of this building a body of work that can be used across multiple income streams. So I've licensed with so many companies, I couldn't even tell you the exact number, but licensing is a huge part of what I do because it creates recurring revenue for my business with like no overhead. So I know a lot of people here do Redbubble and print on demand. And like Michael said, it is similar in the fact that like you don't have overhead, you're putting your designs on products and you're selling it to an audience. But with licensing, it's structured a little bit differently. And, you can use that artwork again and again, depending on who you're licensing it to. So that's a little bit about my backstory.
That's great. Yeah. And just to kind of add to that, so my art licensing experiences and some of the differences, between print on demand and art licensing. Print on demand, very much hands-off approach. You don't know, there's no face-to-face, there's no talking to anyone, there's no contracts, there's no personal interaction with anyone. You're uploading some artwork, you're crossing your fingers, hoping someone finds it and buys it. And when that works, it's great, it's perfect. And like you say, it's the same kind of business model in that you can create something, you can still be making money from it years into the future, and you can license it in all kinds of different ways into different websites. But it's very much I don't know, there's not that personal relationship building. There's no, one-on-one, and there's very little curation going on. It's just, I'm going to upload stuff. I hope someone buys it. Without licensing, you're talking about working with a company that presumably, and maybe you can talk about this, they're going to license your work because they like your work.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of, oh, hey, we'll just take anything and sell it on our shelves like Amazon will or Redbubble will. It's a case of we're taking this because we like it for some reason. There's some motivation behind the reason we like this art, and that's why we're taking it on board. So that gives you a different kind of, and then the licensors themselves, they're going to be promoting your work to some extent. They're going to actually go out and try to sell it. Whereas Redbubble, Merch by Amazon, they're not going to, they're not going to push your work. They're going to list it on their shelves, if you like, but they're not going to go out there and promote it, and they're not going to run promotions. They're not going to be doing sales or any of that kind of stuff. So could you talk a little bit about that and what your experience is with art licensing in those kind of areas?
Yeah. So here's the thing. You can be the most creative person. You can be a talented artist. You could draw just about anything, right? But what happens whenever you want to then partner with brands for art licensing, especially where it is like a co-branded experience. So like I was Gingerbur, my brand name, for Crate and Barrel, or Gingerbur for Moda Fabrics. They're not looking for someone who can draw just about anything well. You want to curate like a signature style. And I'm not saying that we are all like brands, but you kind of want to brand yourself and position yourself so that the artwork that you're making is perfect for an ideal customer. So for instance, when I was doing nursery art, I wasn't going to be licensing that work to, let's say, I don't even know if the store is still a thing, but there was one called Hot Topic whenever I was a teenager, right? And like my cute little nursery animals were not the right fit to try to sell at Hot Topic. That sounds pretty obvious, but easier. I need to explain that because truly, when I'm creating artwork, I need to know who I'm designing for. So when I was doing nursery art, I knew that I was really well aligned to pitch to like children's clothing companies, right? And by pitching, I mean sending my work to them and being like, I would love to license my work for you. Can we partner together? That's a whole other topic. But with licensing, again, people aren't coming to find you necessarily. You have to build a body of work for a specific person or a specific audience. And then your job as the artist is to try to find these partnerships by pitching your work, emailing companies who are perfectly aligned, right?
Sorry.
Oh, are you there?
Sorry, my fault. Just dropped for a second there, but I'm back.
Oh, okay. So your job is to really know who you're designing for and then pitch your work to those companies. So in that regard, yeah, when you're like, for me, my first big client was this Crate and Barrel kids company called The Land of Nod. And I went into this relationship knowing like I'm a perfect fit for them. I do animal drawings for nurseries in a way that they don't already have represented in their brand. I see that they already partner with artists. I'm going to send them an email and I'm going to say, hey, I would really love to design for your company. Here's why. I showed them my work. It was not a fancy like portfolio. It was just like a link to my artwork, or I think it might have been an embedded like little photo collage that it put together. It was not fancy. And that turned into a licensing relationship with a contract, which meant we had to discuss like what work they wanted from me. They didn't take everything. It had to be the right work for their audience, right? The nursery art. We had to discuss like the terms of the agreement. How long would they use that artwork? What I would get paid. When you do licensing, it's usually like a royalty. So you're familiar with royalties. So it's, you get paid quarterly usually with a company like that. And then if it went well, it meant that we got to make more products together. So really and truly, art licensing is like a gift that can keep on giving. And if you do it right, it turns into a long-term relationship with companies. And it really creates like brand awareness, truly. So that's a little bit about it.
I think it's funny you mentioned Hot Topic. That's actually one of the companies I license some of my designs for. That's one of the few ones. So we're like chalk and cheese. We've got two opposite sides of the spectrum, maybe. But yeah. One of the things I was just going to say is obviously that one of the distinctions there as well. And we can talk about this more in terms of, copycats and art theft and stuff like that. But that's one of the things, obviously, that's very prevalent on print-on-demand sites. There is, there's no gatekeeper, there's no curation. So you're putting work out there, people can copy it very easily and undercut you on the very same platform. Obviously, if you're licensing to a company, to a store or something like that, that store is not going to license your art and then 2 weeks later take a very similar copy of your art from someone else who's licensing it because they already have a relationship with you. So maybe we can get into a little bit of that kind of, I know that's maybe an oversimplification because obviously art theft does happen, in the licensing world as well. But what's your experience with that? Is that an advantage in the art licensing space over print on demand, do you think? Or is there still the same issues in both areas?
I think there are still issues no matter where you're positioned, no matter if you're selling your work on Etsy, on your own website, if you're prominent on Instagram, or you're selling through third parties like Redbubble. The risk of your art being taken is always there. My work has been ripped off so much, guys, that it's heartbreaking. I've been ripped off by smaller makers on Etsy who just like searched Pinterest, saw an illustration and kind of traced it and put it out there. Usually it's easier to get someone on Etsy to stop. But I've also, had designs that I created exclusively for a company that, maybe a year later I see in a different home goods store a ripoff of it. So it does still happen, but it happens, I think, further apart. You know what I mean? Because when you're designing for a manufacturer, like you do with art licensing, there is like, let's say I release something with the Land of Nod and they promote it, and that's great. Well, someone at a different company might see it, get inspired, and then I'm going to see something on the shelves of their store later. So the best way to protect yourself is to know that this is not always the most popular solution, but like I register my work. I register my work with the U.S. Copyright Office. And here's the thing: a lot of people aren't based out of the U.S., but U.S. copyright law has a lot of pull in a lot of different countries all over the world. So whenever my work was ripped off by a company in Australia, because of how U.S. copyright works, we were actually able to enforce it because of a relationship that like Australia has with the U.S. and U.S. copyright. I don't want to go too far down that path because it is a little bit like boring, but I will tell you this. I have been ripped off by mass retailers and I've tried to get them to stop. And maybe I got them to stop producing it, but then I had to pay a lawyer to help me enforce, the copyright or enforce the design. I've also been on the other end where after being burned, by people ripping me off, I registered my best work, my favorite work, my specialist work with the U.S. Copyright Office. And then whenever someone did rip me off, we were able to enforce my copyright. And I have received, over the past several years, about $100,000 in copyright infringement settlements. So I will tell you that I feel it because it's happened to me so much. I hate it whenever people say copying is the biggest form of flattery. I just want to be like, no, no, you don't understand. But at the end of the day, we have to keep making good work and putting ourselves out there, because if we're too afraid to put ourselves out there, then we're going to miss opportunity. So it's a double-edged sword,
Yeah. Absolutely. It's such a, like you say, that first time or the repeated times that you see your work copied, it's such a, heart-wrenching feeling. And then especially if you're filing takedowns and they're not working or something like that, it's just so frustrating. And I know that that's an experience a lot of us have with print on demand, especially. But yeah, I think like you say, you have to get past that. You have to kind of grow the thick skin to kind of keep on pushing through it. Because so many times I've been like, oh, you know what, forget it. Why am I creating designs just for other people to copy them and make money from them or whatever? But this is still an incredible business model, whichever way you look at it. And you just kind of have to, take the rough with the smooth. And like you say, copyright claims and taking things to law is not something I've ever had to do yet. Or it's not something I've done yet. I suppose I could have done it. But, I think that's the next step is, we have to step up. If it's a business, you need to protect your work like it's a real business. It's your IP. So, protect it like you mean it and, like it is putting food on the table and go after it like that.
Oh, yeah. And I will just say this, like, there's not a perfect way to do it. I've been the person who tries to call it out on social media when I see someone ripping me off. And I've also been the person who quietly lets things go. I've used lawyers. I will just tell you that there's no perfect way forward, but we can't let the fear of being ripped off keep us from making good work. And I will tell you, the more distinctive your work gets, the more you develop that signature style, like I talked about in the beginning. And the more fans you kind of accumulate over time. I mean, now I don't even have to look for it. People like bring it to me. Someone who's a customer of mine will be like, oh my gosh, I just saw this thing. Someone's ripping off your work. And then I get to decide what we do with it. So it's kind of like, yeah, it still happens. But now I have like watchdogs watching for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Unpaid watchdogs just keeping the lookout for you. That's what you need. Kathleen says, Stacie, who do you use for your legal information? I don't know whether you'd be prepared to share that or where someone might start with something like that.
Well, you really need to find an intellectual property attorney, I think, based out of like wherever you live. So my lawyer is based in the United States and he's based out of Atlanta. His name is Jason Aquilino, and he actually I have a course where I teach people all about licensing your art and building multiple income streams. And he's a special guest inside my course. And he does a live call where he just answers everybody's questions. He's so well-versed. I've worked with a lot of lawyers over the past few years. There's basic rules that you can learn to protect yourself all on your own. Not everybody needs to have like their attorney who's like, hey, Jason, it's Stacie. Let's go get somebody, But at the same time, like I will tell you that there's a lot of ambiguity about copyright, about like what you're allowed to do and not do. There's a lot of like myths, like, oh, if it's changed 10%, then I'm allowed to do this. I mean, there's so much like misinformation out there. So at the end of the day, like I use free resources when I can find them online to learn about how to protect myself. And then I do have a lawyer when I do have something I need to come face to face with. But there are some things that are kind of universal. Like if the work doesn't belong to you, don't take it. Don't rip it off. You can't just change something just a little bit to get away with it. And if you're using reference photos, like if you're just grabbing them online, like be very careful about that, because photos can also be protected with copyright. They are. And so I see that happen to a lot of early artists. They will use reference photos that they just saw with Google search or on Pinterest. And then like that's someone else's intellectual property. So like, you know, best case scenario, create something out of your own imagination. Or if you want to use reference photos, take them yourself. Those are just some ways to kind of be nice and clean and protected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I mean, probably most of us are familiar with like DMCA takedowns and stuff like that for copycats, whether it's on Etsy or Redbubble or something like that. But I do think you're absolutely right. There's a point at which, you know, you reach a point where it's like, okay, this issue is bigger than, you know, just filing a DMCA, and maybe it's time to talk to a lawyer because, hey, what's this worth to me? You know, and when you sit down and work it out, you know, it could be that actually this design, as you know, I'm reporting this every month, you know, on these same platforms. It's taking me this much of my time. What's that worth to me? And could you, you know, hire a lawyer or get someone involved to get you a settlement or to take it up to the next level? And even, you know, sometimes I know it's just the threat of bringing in a lawyer that can deal with things and that can actually scare a company into, you know, getting snappier with the takedowns or whatever it is, which I guess, you know, you just want those positive effects, don't you, really? Whether it's one or a couple. Let's see, this question from Accidental Fire. I actually had a follower on Redbubble alert me to a small independent site that had 20 or 30 of my designs stolen pixel for pixel. Stacie is right. Do this long enough and others start helping you. Yeah, absolutely. I think I've seen the same thing. People alerting me on Instagram and stuff, or asking, hey, I saw your design on TeePublic. Is this you? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. But thanks for letting me know anyway. That's cool. So yeah, that's great. So a couple more questions from me before I get into a few more questions from the comments. I know you talk a lot about, because I've been watching your mini course and going through some of your materials and stuff, and it's fantastic stuff. And obviously you've got, I don't know how many years experience now. When did you start selling on Etsy?
Oh, so 12 years. I've been doing it for 12 years. So whatever 12 years ago is, I think it was 2009. That's what I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I started in like 2014 or something like that. So you got a good head start on me, and you've been doing it a long time. And I know you talk about slow growth is good growth in this kind of business. And I think that's very true. But can you talk a little bit about that? And maybe especially when it comes to licensing, what are those things that take a long time to build up and make this a solid business?
Oh, yeah. So when I talk about slow growth being good growth, and I talk about this with my own students, like, a lot of people who are meeting me right now, they're meeting me at a place where I do have all these multiple income streams and I have this business and everything seems like it's just rolling really smoothly. It's taken me 12 years to do a lot of things. First things first, find a signature style. Like, because I've always loved art. I could do realistic art. I could, you know, do abstract. I could do caricatures, you know, but really, if you're creating a brand that you want to put on products, you have to develop that signature style. And the truth is, it takes time. Like even the early work that I was selling on products on Etsy, it wasn't that good. You know, it takes just like showing up and creating a body of work that gets better and better. The work I'm making today is way better than the work I made 12 years ago. And yet I was still able to sell it on art prints or tea towels. And that's not to disparage the early work. The early work is good because that's where you work out a lot of the problems as a creative. Like, what do I really like to create? What are people responding to? And you get faster and faster at making the work too. So when I have a lot of people I talk to who they're just like, you have a huge body of work. Well, I've been creating work for 12 years and I get faster and faster at my style because I've done it so much. And then also when it comes to like making money, I mean, this is just the long and short of it. Like my first year, I just made a couple $100s on Etsy. It was not much at all. And I was still showing up and treating it like a business, even though there wasn't a lot of return yet. And every year it's grown little by little until it really started to pick up steam. So I feel like the instinct for a lot of people, especially with 12 years ago, learning about all these income streams, I couldn't just Google it and pull up a website that would give me like a roadmap. I wish that it had existed. But it didn't. So I was really piecemealing together all these different ways to grow my business. But now people are like, oh, I could do this and this and this and this and this and this. And they want to do all at once. And so they'll put a lot of energy to like start their, print on demand site or, put together a really quick portfolio. They've learned to make a repeat pattern. And so they're like, oh, I want to license this pattern. And then they're like, why isn't it happening? I made work and I put it out there. Why am I not making money yet? And the truth is, it just takes time. Like you could be the most talented person ever, but it's more than just talent. You have to build a large body of work. You have to have a place to sell it, and you have to be patient with it. So here's my best analogy. Let's say you already have a big, beautiful portfolio of work, and it's perfect for, let's say, like Joe's Crab Shack. I don't know if they like license work, but let's just say you're making the perfect work for like that audience. If you were today to email them and be like, hey, here's my body of work, I'd love to work with you. And let's just say immediately they were like, yeah, let's license together. You still wouldn't get paid for that work for 9 to 12 months, because the way it works with art licensing is you don't get paid until the product's actually being sold. So best case scenario, if you did everything perfectly, which no one does it perfectly, and you got a licensing contract today, you don't get money in the bank for 9 to 12 months, which is why I suggest having multiple income streams. And that's why so many people, as they're pursuing art licensing, they're doing what a lot of you are already doing. They're opening, print on demand sites so they can start to kind of build up a little bit of momentum and build some seed money. And that's why for me, I did sell online on Etsy for a long time, and then eventually moved to my own website. And I eventually was licensing with more and more people, which created more stability for my business. The more contracts I got, the more checks I got in the mail 9 to 12 months later. And eventually then I was also wholesaling product I was producing myself. So one thing I will tell you, the coolest thing about whether you're doing print on demand or art licensing or however you start to pay attention to what people like of yours, right? And those are clues that you use to build your business. So, let's say I had all these animals that I was selling, but what people really liked were my dog illustrations. I'm going to pay attention to that information. I'm going to be like, what else can I do for this audience who really likes my dogs? Am I going to make dog t-shirts? Am I going to make dog bandanas? Am I going to produce my own products featuring like my dog work so that I can try to get that person from Redbubble over to my own website then to keep buying from me? There are so many different ways forward, but the truth is, to get there faster, it's going to take time no matter what. But you do a couple things to your advantage. You pay attention to what people like of your work. You keep refining your body of work, and you start to get really strategic about what you're putting out there. Because eventually, I mentioned that you pitch your work to people when you want a license, but I've had people then who come to me because they've seen my work online, and they're like, wow, I really like this body of work. We'd like to license it. So the more you put your work out there and the bigger you kind of build like consistency with your brand, it gets easier and easier to get the licensing jobs. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the interesting things is, print on demand, we can see in real time, when a sale comes in. A lot of sites will even email you or whatever. Or, I have a spreadsheet where I track month to month. Okay. And every couple of days I go in and tally up and see how we're doing this month and stuff. And licensing is like the complete opposite. Like, you're waiting quarterly to get a report. I actually got my quarterly report from my licensing agent yesterday. So I was just opening that. They just send me an Excel sheet once a quarter, and it says, here's what you earned, da 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 da. And yeah, that's like completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Like in print on demand, you can see it in real time. Art licensing, you're seeing it quarterly, but actually, in a weird way, that's kind of a good thing. It almost forces you to think a bit more long term. For example, one of my products that we license is a wall calendar. So obviously, that's done every 12 months. And that was one of the things that was one of the big earners this particular quarter was I think it was the 2021 wall calendar. And I didn't know this was a big seller for us until yesterday. I mean, I knew that we licensed it, but I was like, I don't know if that really makes any real money. But they'd sold about $20,000 worth of calendars in January or something. So I could see the report there, and I was like, okay, maybe it's worth me actually spending a bit more time on that next year, because they seem to be ramping up the sales every single year. So yeah, it's that kind of thing. Like, you're still getting information. It's just the information you're getting is coming in quarters rather than in 24-hour periods or whatever. And that's still really useful stuff. It's
so useful. And here's the thing. Imagine a scenario where you built up your print on demand site and you have some credibility. Well, if you want to go then pitch your work for licensing, you don't have to just be like, here's my body of work. You can also be like, guess what? I bring a lot to the table because my work's popular. I can show you exactly why it's popular. I have so many customers who already purchased from me on print on demand sites. So it doesn't matter where you start from. You kind of want to build credibility. Like, my designs are popular. And so for the real-time data that you're getting with print on demand, use that to your advantage as you're crafting your style. And then whenever you do want to go, let's say, work with a calendar company or a book company or a greeting card company, all this data helps you. And so let me just be the person to remind you, no one's going to brag on you but you. And it doesn't matter how small the win is, the win matters. So when I mentioned, Crate and Barrel, when I was pitching to them, I didn't have a lot to my name other than the style of work that I had. I was doing okay on Etsy, but I'd been featured on a blog as like a top nursery decor artist. And so I was like, guess what? I'm a top nursery decor artist. Look, here's credibility. Let's work together. And you kind of have to pay attention to what is working in your favor and not be afraid to brag about it.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I learned walking around, I went to the licensing expo in Las Vegas a few years ago, and I was still trying to get my head around, what is the licensing? What's it about? Like who's buying from who? What are the motivations? What are the mechanics of it all? I kind of understood it in principle, but I didn't really, I was trying to think if I was to come and display my work at this show, what work do I display? I've got thousands of designs. Which route do we go down and stuff like that? And suddenly walking around, especially in the artist section and seeing everyone's work, it suddenly just kind of clicked that all people are doing here is they're bringing their work and they're just laying it out on display. And people are walking past, and if they're interested in it, they're coming over and having a look and having a nosy. And there's no there's not data, there's not like click-through rates and percentages and all this kind of stuff you can look at. It's just a much more emotional kind of thing. It's a more, I've had this idea, someone else finds it funny and they want to license it or something like that. It's not like this is selling or this is the trend or, obviously there are trends, but do you know what I mean? It's like a much more nebulous, emotional kind of thing. I mean, is that something that maybe you could talk a little bit about how you come up with your ideas, how you develop those ideas, and to what extent are you doing stuff that you really like versus are you designing for trends or what are the considerations there?
Yeah. Well, first things first, I think inspiration and strategy. So I'm making work that I want to see in the world. I'm creating artwork that I respond to. When for years, and I did do it, was chasing the trends. I felt like I was just making it to hope someone liked it. And, to some extent, I had some success there. But where I really started to connect with an audience and then eventually art directors was whenever I was making work that was really important to me, that I liked. And then it was kind of like people were attracted to that. So there was an emotional response. But even within that, when it comes to art licensing, you have to know a few things. There are some popular things that will never go out of style where you can find success with art licensing. Holiday art is the number one most licensed thing. So you mentioned calendars. Well, that's all about holiday sales. I'm sure you guys see this too with your Redbubble sites or other print on demand. I see it with wholesale and products that I sell. We sell more things during holiday because that's whenever people are shopping. So people who want to license artwork as well, they're preparing for the next holiday season and the products they're going to make. So for I've done a lot of fabric collections, for instance. My top selling fabric collections are holiday fabric collections. And I know you're thinking like, what are all these quilters going to do with all this holiday fabric? Well, they're making gifts to give to people for holiday. And so I always make sure that in my body of work, yes, I'm making the work that I love to make, that I can put on everyday products, but I'm also going to be making holiday work. Another thing, and it took me a while to get there, but I didn't like drawing flowers because that really wasn't my point of view. But it's a lot easier to license floral work than you would think because it's kind of universal. It's on a lot of product. I'm not saying that everyone needs to immediately go make flowers, but I am saying if you are developing a full portfolio of work that you would eventually want to license, it's good to show that you can have some variety in your style. So I'm not going to create flowers in someone else's style. I had to take the time to figure out what a gingerbread flower looked like. So in terms of where my ideas come from, I am inspired, by quotes that I really like that are, in the public domain that I'm allowed to illustrate. I'm inspired by, work I would like to see on products that I want to buy myself. And then I try to be strategic and make sure that my portfolio has licensing categories that are popular. Hand lettering, for instance, was something that I wasn't really good at years ago. And I wouldn't even call myself a hand letterer. But with licensing, you see it everywhere. You pick up a greeting card, there's a hand lettered illustration, or you have a calendar, or hand lettering is on wall art. It's all over the place. So you have to find a style that works for you so that you can have it in your body of work. So my ideas come from like the things that I'm excited about, but then, I make sure that I have my consistent hand lettering, my holiday, and my floral. And then I just have my everyday illustrations. And even within that, I can divide it out further if I need to. So like, let's say I want to pitch my work to PetSmart. Well, I'm going to show them the perfect illustrations in my portfolio that work for that audience. I'm not going to show them like my florals probably, because that's probably not the PetSmart customer. So all that is to say is I make what I want to make, but I also try to make the most of it, right?
Yeah, it's so similar to the the print on demand model as well, and what I try and help people with is do you do your own stuff, do you follow the trends, and it is finding that balance. And of course, one of the big things to understand and to keep in mind is you are constantly producing new work. This is not a case of I'm going to create this great design which is going to carry me for years and years. That's not how it works. You are going to create hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of work in order for this business to actually sustain you and become a decent business. So it's not like I only do this or I only do that. It's, hey, you can find you can do all of it. You can do some trend-based stuff, you can do the more original stuff, or however you want to call it, your own style that's maybe you're not really sure exactly where to place it. But as long as you build up that broad portfolio of work and you cover a few of those bases, after a few years, you'll begin to see this is selling really well. This is working. I'm going to lean into this. Or, you know what, this isn't doing so well. And, sometimes it's like, what do they say? Like you have to murder your darlings or whatever. Like it's the work you really love. Sometimes it just doesn't take off. And I'd love to do that stuff. But right now it's not selling. So let me work on the things that are selling for the next year or so. And then we'll see where we are after that. Maybe we can build up a following on that over time or something like that. So it's so similar. It's just a case of keep doing it, do a lot of stuff and then see what works. I don't know do you know kind of how many designs you've created or what your portfolio looks like at the moment?
There's probably thousands, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I whittle it down every time I go into my portfolio to prepare to pitch my work for art licensing. And I do that a couple times a year. I put myself on a schedule to where I stop myself, I gather my work, I put it in a PDF portfolio, and then I send it to the companies I think I'm best aligned to work with. But I mean, I've made thousands of pieces, but you can have thousands of pieces that are not your best work also. So, there's stuff that was really popular for me several years ago that isn't as popular. So maybe I don't show that in my portfolio. I mean, owls and woodland creatures when I first started were like my bread and butter. And then they fell out of trend and you know what, they're coming back. So like I'm going back to my old portfolio and I'm thinking like, what can I do to rework this work? Because one of the foundations of how I teach is we want to use what we already have in as many ways as possible. Yeah, we need to keep making work. We need to keep making the work that sells. But often you probably have a lot more right in front of you than you realize. And if you can tweak it a little bit, you can probably get a lot more mileage out of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah. And like you say, once you've got, a few thousand designs or whatever, you've got this big portfolio of work, you see this trend coming on the horizon or whatever, and it's like, oh, I've got 6 designs that are really great for that, or I can rework these and throw them together. And, we're back on, it's efficiency and productivity, and it's just good business sense as well, isn't it? So
oh, absolutely. And so I teach a lot of people who want to design fabric. That's something that I found that a lot of not just illustrators but surface pattern designers want to learn how to design fabric. And oftentimes they're so focused on creating new collection, and I'm like, what do you have right in front of you already that you've made that you can tweak a little bit and use for fabric? Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time, right? And so that's how I develop my own collections. I'm like, what have been my best sellers of my standalone illustrations? Can I turn this into some sort of repeat pattern? And what can I do to pull from it to create a nice, robust offering for a fabric company? And so, again, if I was on the hamster wheel of making brand new work for every single client all the time, I'd run out of energy. We have to be smart, because if we don't if we don't use our creative energy wisely, we're going to burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. You said you send a PDF to, prospective licensing clients or whatever. How many designs would be in that PDF when you're sending it off?
Oh, yeah. So everyone wants to know what's the magic number of how many illustrations I need to have. And I see people who learn, like I said, to make a repeat pattern. They're like, all right, I want to go send this out and pitch it. And I'm always like, hey, slow down a little bit. Like, I'll say, like, if you're doing collections, like a body of work that's related in some way, like have at least 3 collections to show, at least 3. Because the truth is, if you're first learning how to create artwork and build collections, your earliest collections are not going to be your best. So oftentimes, like, I want people to slow down a little bit and make sure that they're presenting their best work, because the worst feeling ever is pitching and, getting a no. But you get no's no matter how developed you are. So you want to set yourself up for success and show your best work. And it's not about like having thousands of things to choose from. You want to have the best work for your client that you're pitching to. So if what you can do is go through your body of work and gather, 12 to 24 pieces of work that are like perfect for this dream client, show them that work. And I would much rather you not just like, oh, I have one piece that I think could work for this client, I'm going to pitch it to them. You need to show that you're not a one-trick pony. You need to show that your well runs deep and that you could actually turn this into a long-term relationship with a client. Because like my best licensing relationships, I've been designing with them for years and years and years. And it's a trust thing. And if I were to only have one design for that company, then that's actually not the best fit for me. So take your time, build up a portfolio. There's no perfect number, but I don't know if I totally agree with this quote, but I'm going to share it. Like, you're only as strong as your weakest piece in your portfolio. I kind of get mixed feelings about that, but I understand the concept. Like, you want to show your best work. And if what you have is just a lot of work that you've made and you're kind of just showing it because you've made it, you're not your best editor. Before you pitch your work, you want to edit your own work. You want to whittle it down, and you want to make it so easy for this company to say yes to you, right? So there's no dream magic number, but become your own editor, your own critic, and show them the work that you think is perfect for them.
Yeah, that's all really good advice. I think it's like whenever I'm trying to hire a designer, if there's a particular design I want to do, I can't handle it myself, so I want to hire someone to do that style. It's that kind of same kind of dynamic. I'm looking through hundreds of portfolios, and I'm scanning stuff, and I imagine this is what it's like for a lot of art licensing businesses or brands. They're looking through, or they get lots of submissions, and they're just scanning through stuff, and they're making almost split instant decisions on what they see. And you've got to kind of think, put yourself in their shoes. Okay, what are they looking for? What's going to stand out? What's going to be, different enough about my work so that it's going to, grab their attention? And just, exactly show your best foot forward, and don't show them everything, but show them something that you've taken some time, you've made some decisions, and you've shown that you're, someone they can work with. And especially that, what you said about a long-term relationship, I think that's something I hadn't really thought about before, is that brands and businesses want to work with other brands and businesses that are there for the long term, that are in it for the long haul, that they can build a decent relationship with, instead of just, oh, we want to license that piece and then never talk to you again. That's really good advice.
Well, it creates stability. So like for fabric, for instance, I've done 12 fabric collections with this company, and I don't see any end in sight because I have the right work for them. And they know, because I've shown them my portfolio, I have a deep well of ideas that are perfect for their ideal customer, right? And I also am reliable to work with. So it turns into these long-term things. And when I designed for Crate and Barrel, I designed for them for like 5 years. And I still am getting royalty checks for things that I designed, 7 years ago for them. It's fantastic. And the same for like publishing for books. I'm still getting royalty checks from coloring books that I produced years ago. And there's been other projects with these brands because it's the right fit for their ideal customer. And, I can create the work that they need.
That's great. I realize we are already 43 minutes in, which is incredible. I've barely touched the top 3 questions that I wanted to ask you. So let me take a couple from the comments. And if you've got a question for Stacie, do get it in the comments pretty soon, because we can maybe do another 5-10 minutes at the most. So get it in the comments now if you've got a question. So we had one from Sarah who said, what are your thoughts on licensing agents?
Oh, yeah. So I think they can be great. I don't have an art licensing agent. Here's what happened. I didn't know they existed. I started, my first taste of art licensing was a magnet company that saw me on Etsy and was like, can we use your art on our magnets? And that's when it was like, ooh, this is awesome. I can reuse my art over and over again. And then I just started pitching to my dream clients. And then once I realized an agent could be really helpful to keep me organized, because not all artists are this way, but I had to work really hard to become an organized artist. And agents are organized. They handle your contracts for you. They're pitching your work on your behalf so you can focus more on the creative, so to speak. I think they're great. But by the time I went to agents to be like, hey, can we work together? They're like, why do you need us? You've already landed a lot of big clients. And truly, like, I don't want to give them a percentage of my sales for the relationships I had already developed. So I think agents are great. You have to get with an agent at the right time in your career so that they're opening doors for you. And, I would love an agent. I have an agent for books, but not for just my illustration work. So there are agents for so many different things.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I mean, I'm personally using a licensing agent right now. And we've had that relationship with them for a few years now. And it's really because at the time I didn't have the bandwidth to go out and reach out to companies. And I felt like if I had someone doing that for me, and they were based in the States, I was based in the UK, so they can handle, contacts with people I don't really know. So it was a good fit at the time. But I think now, a few years in, I do think, it might be the time to close that relationship down and maybe look at other opportunities and doing it ourselves, because there's obviously, you're basically, well, my split with the licensing agent is 50-50. So you're looking at those checks thinking, that could have been double if I would have had those relationships myself and worked out with them. But would you've got that relationship in the first place? So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, I guess. But I certainly think it's worth, if I was starting afresh today, I think I'd start reaching out to companies directly and seeing where that got me before I turn to a licensing agent off the bat.
Yeah.
Joe has a question. Isn't trademarking your work expensive when you are trademarking thousands of designs? I think Joe probably means copyright rather than trademark, but could you comment on that?
Yeah. So first of all, we trademark my brand name Gingerbur. So that's like a branding thing, a mark, or so to speak. Your designs, you're going to want to copyright. Yes, it can get really expensive. I'm not telling everyone to go out and copyright all of their work, especially if you're still finding your signature style. But what I will tell you is if you start to have some pieces that are popular, that are picking up traction for you wherever you're selling them, you should copyright them. And you can copyright in groups of 10 to get your price down. And the US Copyright Office changed their prices last year. So I can't quote you off the top of my head what their new price is to copyright in groups of 10. Be smart about it, be strategic. We copyright in batches. And also there's differences between if your work's already been published versus unpublished, and that changes the prices of things. Yeah, it can get expensive. But like I said, when you're looking at the fact that like I've spent maybe a few $1,000s registering work, and then I have gotten not over, but around $100,000 in licensing settlements where people ripped off my work, it totally was a good trade-off. But I have been there where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm growing a business. I don't have a lot of profit margin. I don't want to put the money into registering my work because that's money coming out of my own pocket. So you have to decide what's best for you. But I'm always of the idea that if you're taking your business seriously and you want to scale it and grow it, protect yourself.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think you can obviously register your copyright for stuff, years down the line. You don't have to register it right away. And I've never registered copyright on anything so far, but I am just about to, because we have certain designs that are getting copied left and right. And it's beginning to dawn on me that, like you say, we could be getting some settlement decisions for these things because they're getting ripped off so much. But most lawyers won't touch a case until they have a copyright registration in place. So you can register it after, but obviously it's a getting complicated legal discussion, which we won't have time for today. But yeah, thanks for sharing on that, Stacie. A couple more questions here. Jason, how do you find companies to license your artwork?
The simplest advice I will give you is walk into a store and look at the products, pick them up, look underneath and see who made the product. If it's a product that you're interested in, there's a brand name on it. And then I have a little notepad. Well, it's a digital notepad now, but I write down companies that I think, ooh, that could be a good fit for my style. And, we often think about like these big flashy names of who we want to license with, but there are so many manufacturers that I bet you're not familiar with at all who are like literally creating the products in the stores you're shopping at. So pay attention to the brand names, the tags and things, write them down. And that's like the most basic place to start to find companies.
Yeah. I was just in a little gift shop yesterday, actually, and I do the same thing. Pick up, I'm looking at the greetings cards, the prints. I'm thinking, who's done this artwork? What is this? Turn it over, www. some company on the back. Just make a note of it. Who are these people? And they're stocking, who knows, hundreds or thousands of independent gift shops around the country. You've never heard of them. You've got no idea who they are, but they're, I was looking at designs and thinking, I could do better than this. This isn't that great. So if you're in a similar position like that, that's great advice. Just pick things up, turn them over, take a picture, and go and do some research when you get back home. So Great stuff. A couple more questions before we wrap it up because time is getting close. Nancy, is there an industry standard royalty rate an artist can expect when licensing their artwork?
It depends on the industry. It depends on the product. I've seen as low as 3%, as high as 10%. Some smaller companies will give you higher royalties. You have to know that the bigger the company, probably the smaller the royalty is going to be, which feels counterintuitive. But you have to know that the businesses with the larger distribution are probably going to want to give you a lower royalty, but they're also producing way more units. So you're probably going to come out making way more money. There's always room for negotiation. You just have to know that. And that's the simplest way. So I'd say 3 to 10% is a pretty standard range. There are always variants outside of that.
Yeah, that's great. I think from print on demand side, we might look at that and go, oh, 10%, or, that seems really low compared to what you're used to maybe in Redbubble or something like that. But like you say, you're talking about potentially magnitudes of difference in terms of sales. And of course, if something goes in Target or something like that, and it's being licensed all around every Target store across the country, that's very different from you having a Redbubble product that's hidden away in the back end of the internet where someone has to know the specific keyword to find that thing. Yeah. It's not being promoted actively. So yeah, those those royalty rates might sound small, but when it comes to it, obviously you're living proof that you can build a very big business off the back of, licensing deals like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me just see here if there are any other questions. Joe says, are copyrights retroactive? So can you copyright the work after someone has stolen it?
Ooh, yeah. So 2 things to know. This is where the internet comes in handy. If I put something on Instagram 5 years ago, but I hadn't registered it yet, and then it gets stolen, well, first I'm going to have to go pay for my registration of my copyright after the fact. They will ask you when you made the work, first of all. They're just going to be like, okay, today, let's say it's 2021, but I made the work in 2015. All I have to do is say I made it in 2015. Then if you want to go enforce that copyright because you found someone who stole it, you just have to have some kind of proof of when you created it. So that's where it's really helpful. Like, oh, look, here's a screenshot of my Instagram from 2015 that shows that I actually put this work out into the world in 2015. It doesn't matter that you're just now registering the work, but you don't want to contact them at all, the other company who's infringed on you, until you have that certificate in hand, because then they're going to be like, oh, it's not enforceable. You didn't register it.
Yeah, exactly. Great advice. Yeah. So yeah, the answer is, of course, you can do that. Sometimes it's better if you register it straight away, but of course, like a lot of us, we're creating tons of work, but you can absolutely go back and register the copyright for something. And like you say, as long as you've got some evidence that you created it or that you published it back then you're good to go, right?
Yeah, and you only need the evidence if you're trying to enforce it. Like you don't have to have any proof. The Copyright Office isn't going to be like, give me proof that you made this in 2015. Yeah. You're just filling out a form. You only need like the proof if you're trying to win a case with a settlement for like a retroactive royalty with a company who's infringed on your work.
Absolutely. Wonderful stuff. Thank you so much, Stacie. We've gone for 52 minutes, which was a little bit over what we said we would. So I think we will wrap it up there, but thank you everyone for your many questions. Stacie, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your course, the Creative Powerhouse that you've got going on right now?
Yeah. So right now I'm running a free mini course. It's a 4-part video, go at your own pace course delivered to your inbox. And the whole idea is that we are these creatives, and there are so many ways forward for us to create income, whether you're doing, art licensing or print on demand, or you want to wholesale products that you've designed and created yourself, or you want to sell on your own platform. There are so many ways to be a successful creative entrepreneur. But oftentimes I think that we have an idea that there's only one way forward as a creative because we see people we admire have a successful path, right? So we're like, I want to emulate that. The truth is we all have different talents from each other, and we need to build paths for ourselves for our own successful creative careers. So this course is to try to help you get into the right mindset for how to develop a flourishing creative business. It's to help you to practice dreaming big about where you want to take your business, and it actually gives you real strategy about how you can grow your business. So by the end of the mini course, my goal is that for a lot of people, their path will be made a lot more clear about what interests them for their business, and that they will just feel really empowered. Creative powerhouses, that's what I call us. So yeah.
It's great. And I think the second lesson just went live today, a few hours before we hopped on the call here. So if you go and sign up, this is completely free, and it's you can access the existing ones you've already published, right? And then there's still 2 more to go. Is that correct?
Yes, there's 2 more to come. You can watch anything. If you're signing up today, you can still watch lesson 1 and lesson 2. Lesson 3 will come out on Saturday, and then lesson 4 will come out on Tuesday. And then I'm also doing live Q&As a few days the coming week to answer questions you have. So it'll be a lot like we're doing right now. It'll just be Q&As where I'm answering questions you have.
That's awesome. So yeah, if you want to sign up, michaelessick.com/Stacie is the link for the free Creative Powerhouse course. That is an affiliate link, by the way. So if you do buy something from Stacie down the line, I'll get a cut of that just to cover my back there for legal reasons. But yeah, link is up there for the course, michaelessick.com/Stacie. Highly recommended. And all that remains for me to say is thank you so much, Stacie, for coming on today and answering everyone's questions. It was wonderful. I felt like we only scratched the surface, but it was still very valuable, and lots of very kind comments and thank yous coming in. Thanks from Joe. Thanks from Gary. So thank you so much for joining us. And I think we will wrap it up there for today. So thank you everyone as well for joining us. Thank you for your questions. And I will be in your inboxes if you're a subscriber to me tomorrow. We're doing another live stream next week. But if you can say thanks to Stacie and thank you for her time and her insight. And I'll talk to you soon. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.